A beautiful, fragile young girl is trapped in a luxurious mansion where she has to fight 8 people armed to the teeth, ironically with nothing in her hands. And those crazy people are the newlywed husband's family. That's right, I'm talking about Vieta Nord, one of the most creative and engaging horror movies of the 2010s. With a limited budget and limited context, the director pair Mad Bettinelli, Oppen and Tyler Keelet still tell an unconventional story, bringing the audience to one surprise, through another, creating a premise for a new story. The explosive ending opens up a chance to shine for Samara Weaving, a golden face in modern horror filmmaking. So, what happened in this work? How do the characters play with the viewer's psychology? Welcome to DT Film. Next, let's learn about the house murder of brave bride Grace. Note, the later part of the video will reveal a lot of important details in Ready or Not, so please come back here only if you have fully enjoyed this roller coaster ride, and if you've seen the movie or don't care about spoilers, let's go. 1989 at the La Dumas mansion, 2 brothers, Daniel and Alex, were running hand in hand. In the middle of the street, Daniel encountered Charles on his Aunt Helen's wedding day. It turned out that he was the one being hunted by the homeowner. Charles gasped, begging for some mercy from Daniel, but the little master did the opposite. Right after that, Charles got hit by 2 arrows in a dangerous place. He was dragged into the room as a sacrifice. Helen burst into tears but could do nothing. The door gradually closed in front of Daniel's eyes. The opening scene ended. In which, May 30, 2019, Alex, the younger brother of the Dumas family, has grown up and is about to marry Grace, the woman he loves so much. The wedding takes place in a warm and solemn scene. The whole Dumas family is visibly upset. But they still blessed the young couple. After the wedding ended, Grace quickly went to Alex's room to get ready for a passionate evening. At the same time, Aunt Helen appeared like a shadow in the corner of the room, scaring Grace. Now that Alex has revealed the family's secret rule, Grace will have to participate in a game on her wedding night. She couldn't refuse, because it was a tradition for many generations. The couple entered the hall, where the whole family was waiting. The owner, Tony, Alex's father, began explaining the family tradition. And in the 19th century, the great-grandfather Victor Lomas defeated his valuable partner Lo Ball in exchange for glory and wealth for the family, from which his descendants introduced games before becoming new members. Grace picked out the hide and seek card. Seeing that, the whole family could only look at each other in concern, but the boat had already anchored and there was no way to turn back. Tony's father then explained the rules of the game, that Grace had to hide well for 100 seconds before the whole family went looking for her. Luckily, they won't use security cameras. If she can hide her face until morning, Grace will win. While she was suddenly looking for a place to hide, Lomas's whole family started looting things, including guns and bows, because they said it was hide and seek, but in fact this was a killing game that they had participated in 30 years ago. Grace still didn't know anything. After a while of cowering in the food elevator, she decided to come out because she thought everyone was just joking. Just after walking a short distance, the bride was dragged into a dark corner by a goose. The person controlling her was Alex. He knew everything, so he tried every way to help her. At that moment, the maid Clara entered the room to find a child from the Lomas family who was sneaking out of bed to play. Before she could grasp the situation, Clara was blown to pieces. The person who pulled the trigger was Emily, the family's second daughter, who mistook Clara for Grace. Poor heroine, now she realizes what she is facing. Alex quickly pulled his wife into another room. He explained the insidious game in more detail, that Grace must die before dawn or the whole family will meet a miserable end. Alex really wanted to run away with his fiancée, but couldn't. Because if you do that, both will immediately go to the altar. He can only find a way to open a way for Grace, but after that, she has to fend for herself. The female protagonist tore off her dress and put on snaker shoes for ease of movement. Not having gone far, she encountered a crowd of crazy people. In a stroke of luck, Emily missed the shot, allowing Grace to run away. The young bride's luck has not yet run out, But she is invited by her eldest brother, Daniel, to take pity on her. He gave her 10 seconds to escape, before howling. The whole family rushed into the study, but Grace had already disappeared. While the homeowner was confused, Emily's younger sister became naughty again. So the second maid passed away. Dumas's family began to argue. They argued heatedly, intending to break the rules from their ancestors' time. But that's not possible, because who would play so badly? They have to be more urgent, because if they don't catch the bride before dawn, they will be lost. Good thing, Grace is in the upper hand. She found a shoot gun and then went to the back door of the mansion. At that moment, Alex entered the control room to open the door to let his wife run out. I thought the affair would go smoothly, but Alex was caught red-handed. Dad Tony and Daniel knocked on Alex's head, causing him to lie unconscious. As for Grace, she was also not allowed to use a gun, so she had to throw the hot teapot into the housekeeper's hand, then run back into the house. By chance, the bride met the third woman hiding in the food elevator. This girl intended to denounce Grace, but after just a few words, she suddenly hit the moving button. The bar went down and crushed the poor maid. So scared, Grace slipped away again. It was almost dawn, but the prey became more and more aggressive. Alex was planning to betray, making Dumas's family feel like they were sitting on fire. They had to meet again to discuss. Here, Aunt Helene said firmly that no matter how much Alex protested, he still had to preside over the ceremony. Because that is exactly what she did with her ex-husband. The female lead is hiding in the dark, so that's all I hear. She clearly understood that if she couldn't escape now, this life would be over. Grace then jumped up and ran out into the vast garden. The mistress headed to the nearby farm and discovered George, the grandson of the Dumas family. As if drowning to reach him, Grace tried to be gentle with the boy. Just to eat a living shot through my hand, it turns out that little George is evil-eyed but just as cruel as the adults in the mansion. Grace had to rely on herself again. Startled by the cow nearby, Grace also slipped and fell into the hole. This is where the Dumas family hid the body of George, the first victim in the deadly game of hide and seek. Grace didn't want to fall into the same situation. Even though she was exhausted, she still tried to climb up. Finally, she reached her destination, but the heroine was all in tatters. But that's not important anymore. The number one priority is to keep your life. Grace took all her remaining strength, rushing straight to the main door. She climbed over the fence. The iron bars cut deeply into the meat, which had turned pale from loss of strength. Despite the excruciating pain, the heroine still managed to succeed. But to no avail, a car drove past, leaving the young girl screaming in the dark. Meanwhile, the Dumas family became more and more panicked, realizing that Grace was in control. Shortly after disposing of the fateful victims, Daniel admitted that the whole family deserved to go to hell. Returning to the main character, despite her injuries, Grace still ran deep into the forest. Even if Stephen's shop chased Kip, she would still defeat her. Grace stole the housekeeper's car to drive away, but this was a rich family's car, so she knew she had just stolen it. Grace was quietly burying herself before Stephen's eyes. How the hell on the way back to the mansion, Grace still barely moved to give Stevens a fatal blow that caused the car to somersault several times. She moved away from the rubble only to find Daniel waiting. He and his father, Tony, restrained Grace one at a time. Meanwhile, Meki, the mother in the ignorant Mass family, is looking for a way to manipulate Alex. She sweetly said that no matter how rebellious the youngest daughter was, she could not leave her blood and flesh. Alex also responded. However, everything is gradually arranged. Grace is tied tightly to the table, then around were a group of hooded people preparing to make a deal with Mr. DePaul. As soon as they took a sip of water, they vomited violently. Turns out, Daniel poisoned the whole family. He freed Grace and took her to safety. But, his wife, Sharady, was waiting and pointed a gun at the two. Before Daniel could explain in detail, he ate the entire copper candy. He only had time to urge Grace to run away before passing away. But, Grace has not escaped yet. Her next obstacle is her father Tony. This man strongly believes that killing his daughter-in-law is as easy as drinking tea. But she used a candle to hit him twice and lay him down immediately. The lamp fell and the forged plate nearby caught fire. From father to mother, Grace had to confront Mrs. Becky. How people rushed to tear each other apart. Initially, the female lead was crushed, but thanks to her youthful endurance, she successfully overturned the bet. Grace pressed her mother-in-law on her back, punched her in the face, and cursed loudly. A few seconds later, Becky's face turned into a pile of dust. At that moment, Alex appeared. No matter what he said, Grace remained silent. Now, the youngest son of the Lidiomas family realized just after tonight, he will lose his muse forever. In that case, Alex had no choice but to return the salary to Grace and do exactly what the family had expected. The ritual was performed again. Lidiomas's house echoed with the name of the Lord of Hell at Alex, preparing to plunge the knife into his newlywed wife's chest. In the nick of time, Grace still had time to spin the wheel, so the knife pointed at Mrs. Becky. The bride jumped up like an animal, brandishing her weapon in front of the whole family. As soon as the morning dawned, the homeowner appeared to be in charge, and the people went up to mourn. The sentence of asking for death is better than death. But nothing happened. From commoner to ancient, Helen still wants Grace's head. But, as soon as she moved her hand, it rubbed, the punishment officially begins. The Liderma's house exploded like firecrackers, leaving no one behind, including the child. And Grace smiled wryly. The luxurious palace was soon filled with blood. Only Alex and Grace remained. Despite this guy, the main half is also not interested in anything anymore. A night like this is like dying. She took off her ring and officially severed her relationship with her newlywed husband. So Alex also followed the clan. Grace then left, while the legacy of the Lidermas family was turning into ash. She casually sat in front and took out a cigarette to smoke. The police arrived, but Grace still had a cold face. When asked what happened, she replied briefly. Behind Grace, a family is fading. A movie story that seems very direct and simple, without trying to install multiple layers of villages, but hidden under that surface layer is the ingenuity of the production team. Because they constantly toyed with viewers' expectations. Somewhere it is shown in the smallest aspects of the story. For example, in the first scenes, the movie will introduce Grace as a cheerful girl. Realistic and somewhat naive. Right from the name, it shows that this is quite a feminine character. Even so, she still wants to integrate into the Lidermas family, despite the warnings from within. But later those arrangements were broken. The Lidermas played with you, forcing Grace to tear off her dress, shedding her soft and seductive image. Or Alex, it doesn't matter, he looks like a tough and loving husband, ready to do anything for her. But in the later scene, this guy harassed Grace and caused her to make her own food. In the end, he even betrayed his other half. Daniel is similar. He appears as a somewhat unpleasant person, even being criticized by Grace. However, the longer the movie goes on, the more this guy turns to goodness. Become a powerful assistant in the fight to save the heroine's life. I tell myself, the most surprising turn of the wheel came from the group of villains. Lidermas family. They are introduced as bosses in the loot game village, rich in CPS, his head is full of grit. I thought nothing could make this house difficult, including killing others. That is until they meet Grace. In just a few hours, from the top of Lidermas's house, it's like a chicken stuck in its hair. Let the oil and vinegar fall on you and receive a bitter end. How ironic that they lost to someone who, just a short while ago, they see with half an eye. That's before mentioning other donkey-like details, for example, this gun. Looking at the way it is set up in the poster and some of the shots, everyone must think that this is a very precious and dangerous item. Then the female lead will die in the palace full of old mistakes. But no, the gun couldn't even shoot anyone. Another example is this cargo ladder. At the beginning of the